All right, everybody. Whew. Welcome to Third Thursday, and it looks like we're kicking off the summer because it's hot all of a sudden. I was looking at the temperature, and I'm like, you know what? I don't know if I have to go, even though I'm hosting this thing. I don't know. All of a sudden, it was like beautiful for the last month and a half and 90 degrees. But thank you for coming. Thank you for making it out. Thank you for supporting Austin Shakespeare. And speaking of support, as you know, Third Thursday is a free event, kind of. I pay for it. It costs me $200-something to do this every month. So please, the food is free. Please contribute by putting in whatever you want, $5, $10, $5,000. Help keep this going. Okay, so tonight we are going to be talking about Austin Shakespeare. Okay, Shakespeare in general. Well, I'm excited to talk about Austin Shakespeare and their educational efforts for Shakespeare and enjoying Shakespeare, because I love Shakespeare. So do you want to come up, or do you want to come up afterwards? Oh, okay, all right. So I guess I'm going to be kicking off by myself, and then Ann Chicalella will be joining, and we want to get your engagement. So what we're going to be doing is you should have some handouts. So we want you guys to be, we'll have some of you reading some of this stuff. Don't feel nervous. We're not going to quiz you on what where for means or anything like that. But first, before I get started, if you guys could raise your hands and someone tell me, and thank you, so you get the first one. That was my trick. What do you know about Romeo and Juliet? So I'm going to talk about Romeo. Like, what do you know right now? Okay, so first one is what? Okay, first thing you know about Romeo and Juliet, it's a romance. Beautiful. Ron. They die. Spoiler. Thanks. Yes, they die. Yes. Remind me your name again? John.
It's teenagers, just doing teenager things, thinking that love is so consequential, and then getting themselves killed because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to call on you in a minute, Sinead, because I want to non-Austin Shakespeare people. What are any what comes to your mind? Anything? Yes. You have a quote that is from Romeo and Juliet, and yes, Tyler.
It's also a forbidden romance.
A forbidden romance. Oh, nice. That's very true. Do you remember why it's forbidden?
Some rivalry and animosity between the
Yeah.
families.
Yeah. There we go. Yeah. And I'll get.
I think of Leonardo DiCaprio, Clarice, and all the other thousands of adaptations and remakes that have been of it.
It still seems to be hot in the 2020s after 400 plus years. Like Justin's been waiting.
Aren't they like Italian?
Fair Verona. Yeah. There we go. Yeah. Yep.
If there was only a bit more communication, they would have had a happy ending. And I don't care for tragedies. Pox on that writer.
Oh, jeez. All right. Someone's bringing the soul of Ayn Rand in here, I guess. Like, she was not a fan of Shakespeare.
Well, I didn't like it in ninth grade way before I met her. So it's
Well, I think none of us liked it in ninth grade. I think that's part of the problem. All right, last one, and then we're going to move on.
All right, so they named an architectural feature after the Romeo and Juliet.
Oh, right.
It's the Juliet balcony.
Oh, the Juliet balcony. I didn't actually know that. So I just learned something. Thank you. Well, here, so thank you all for your participation. I want to think about something I think about a lot is like, where do you get educated in love? Where does love education come from for us? We think it's very normal to spend years of rigorous training in school and in labs to become microbiologists. But for love training, we're fine with just picking up, whatever comes our way. Whatever we see on TV, whatever our parents did, whatever. We say it makes sense to have this scientific education to enter into scientific affairs. But what do we do and what do we think it takes to enter into love affairs? My claim, something I believe in, is that Shakespeare, among other literary writers, are the model makers and the trainers, or they could be the trainers for you, of love, among many other spiritual values and concepts. But I think you have to be willing, especially with Shakespeare, you have to be willing to do a little bit of the work in the imaginative world yourself. So I'm going to quote 4 lines from Henry V. It's from that prologue. I'm not going to read the whole prologue, but that's the prologue, the intro to Henry V. where he's basically in the chorus is trying to argue that, hey, we're on this bare stage. We're going to have these great armies in the Battle of Agincourt. I want you to just use your imaginations. Pretend you're here. And he says, oh, pardon, since a crooked figure may attest in little place a million, and let us, ciphers to this great account, on our imaginary forces work. Let us on our, I think this is one thing you should memorize about Shakespeare. Let us on our imaginary forces work. Let Shakespeare work on you. So this is not a meaningless and pointless exercise as in like modern art, where it's like just go in there and whatever happens. No, there's a purpose behind this. Okay, so I want to bring Anne on in just 1 second. I'm going to finish one thing up, Anne. Are we good on time? Okay. Okay, I'll do my best. I think I started a couple minutes late, but thank you. So I want to say something about Romeo and Juliet and Shakespeare in his own time, in Shakespeare's time. And there's a reason we're bringing up Romeo and Juliet. I probably have spoiled the secret with all of you privately, but because I was excited. But in Shakespeare's time, Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet and most of his, well, let's talk about Romeo and Juliet, most of the plays as well, were cliches in his own time. So we think of Romeo and Juliet today as a cliche. In 1595, when he's writing and publishing them, they're cliches. The story of ill-fated lovers from bitterly feuding families was as cliche in that time as it is today. Goes all the way back to Ovid, Pyramus and Thisbe from his Metamorphoses. But even in his own time, French and Italian writers had been telling that story for centuries. English writers. In fact, I looked this up. We know that Shakespeare's direct source for Romeo and Juliet is Arthur Brooks' Tragical History of Romeo and Juliet, 1562. This is a long English poem, which is based on a French prose story by Pierre Boileau in 1559, who was adapting an Italian version by Matteo Bandello, who in turn based his narrative on Luigi di Porto's version in 1525. Of a tale by Masaccio Salaternino or something like that. I don't know. 1476. The point is, over and over and over again, these have been told. So the question I ask when I've been entering into the world of Shakespeare with Anne is, what's the deal with Shakespeare? Why Shakespeare and none of these other writers and none of these other tales that have been told thousands of times? What is special about Shakespeare, who's just recycling stories? Now, I'll ask that as a question, and then I'll give you my answer real quick. Does anybody have an idea of why do we still read and do Austen Shakespeare 400 years later? Anybody have an idea? Yes.
Because Shakespeare put in a lot of raunchy, fun humor.
So there's lots of fun humor. I will say that the main reason there's something special about it is not the story and the plot, but it's an overarching theme in his work of the power of language. And I believe that this is this is true of all literature in a certain sense, but I think Shakespeare stands head above most other writers. And I think in this play, Romeo and Juliet, that as I'm rereading it again for the first time in years, I'm seeing like a really important theme of the power of language to make and unmake the world. That's a big thing. What time have I got?
You good.
Okay. So I'm going to end. I think I'll bring you on, and then if we have time, we'll do the balcony scene later. But I wanted to give you, I want you to be a part of this. I want to talk to you about this stuff. That's why I brought you here. I want you here. So I wanted to give you some tips on reading Shakespeare and experiencing it and going to the plays. And the first tip I'm going to give you is what's called the words, words, words principle. And it comes from a famous moment in Hamlet when Hamlet is asked,
What are you reading?
"What are you reading?" He says, "Words, words, words." So when you're going into a Shakespeare play, you have to take this as a very prominent part of the experience. And if you're just letting the words shine over you and you're not thinking about them, and this is why I tell people to try your best to engage with the work a little bit beforehand, I think you're missing out a lot. Because again, these plots are cliche, but what's special about it are these words. And okay, we're going to stop there we'll have Anne join us, and she has some things to say and some exercises, and we'll, based on time, we'll see what else we can get in there. But thank you. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for all for coming. Hope you enjoyed your beer and your nosh. You know, I know too much about Shakespeare. That's the problem. So I think of things like, just today I was thinking about, there is actually a comedy, Romeo and Juliet, by Lope de Vega from the Spanish Golden Age. Because in a way, the first part of Romeo and Juliet is a rom-com. Do you know? It kind of goes wrong there. But so I will also tell you the secret of really why Kirk has me. Because I cast him in Romeo and Juliet. So Kirk auditioned like a regular human being. He was nervous, but he did great. And I cast him as the prince because I thought he had the profile. So we're really excited to have him do it. We'll be out at the Curtain Theater doing it, which is great. I'd love to hear from you all, though, about the problems with Shakespeare. Meaning part of what I said today was, so what's with Shakespeare? Why are we still reading Shakespeare? Why are we still performing Shakespeare? All over the world, every culture has translated Shakespeare. But let's start with the problems. So anybody want to share with us, so what's with Shakespeare in terms of problems, Deb? Good, and you're speaking so dramatically. Thank you. Language has changed. Thank you, Ron. It's a problem because it's philosophy, or you're saying? Oh, his philosophy isn't great. Is that what you're saying? He has a tragic philosophy. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. No, thank you. Go ahead.
I remember as a kid, it was really hard to apply it to modern life because so much of the conflict itself originates from the kind of social, political structure of the time that,
Sure.
oh, well, I mean,
Like there were two groups and they didn't like each other for no apparent reason, so they couldn't get along and they feuded over centuries. Not like today. We don't have that problem anymore. So I gave out some sheets of strips of paper because I wanted you to get the words out of your mouth, because I think the answer to what's the big deal about Shakespeare is the words themselves. Your words. So each of you has a number. Please notice the number. I'd also would love for you to say the underline that says what this is from. So if I don't hear from you, I'm just skipping you. So you could bum out right now if you're too scared. Number one. Who's got number one? Go.
once more on pain of death, all men depart.
Who says that?
Prince.
The prince says that. Wonderful. Thank you. That's in Romeo and Juliet. Number two.
I mean, sad hours seem long.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Who says that? Romeo. Thank you. Three.
I would, my father looked, but with my eyes.
Oh, isn't that
Hermia from Midsummer.
Midsummer Night's Dream? Thank you so much. Four.
This is also Hermia from Midsummer. I frown upon him, yet he loves me still.
Yeah, I give him bad looks and he still likes me. Five. Am I up to five? Or did you have five, Tara? No, that was four. Five copped out. That's okay. It's the guy who's drinking. Six. Oh, thank you. Well, I'm just going to jump in here to say one thing that may seem obscure, but I think explains Romeo and Juliet. So, you know, all Shakespeare plays were done during the day, right? Because they didn't have electric lights. So, all of Romeo and Juliet has fantastic images of moonlight and all sorts of light images. Juliet is light because he's got to make you see the night. If he had lights, maybe he wouldn't have written such great poetry about the night. Just think about that. What am I up to? Seven? Yes. Who's seven?
Me.
Oh, me.
Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. That's from Mark Antony. Mark Antony says that over the body of assassinated Julius Caesar in Julius Caesar.
Oh, Julius Caesar. Eight.
I would not wish any companion in the world but you.
Oh.
The Tempest.
Oh. That would be good for Valentine. Don't you think you could send that? A nine. It is Anthony. And who is he speaking to? Do you know? Cleopatra. And I like that you said love. Love. 10.
But sir, what's like through yonder window, Grace?
Oh.
Romeo.
Romeo. Thank you. And what number did you just have? 10. 11.
He should have died hereafter. There would have been time for such a word. Tomorrow.
Macbeth. Shakespeare loves repeating words. Tomorrow and tomorrow. And that's how it feels, right? When it goes on and on and on, it just doesn't end. That you were 11? 12.
Once more into the breach, dear friends. Once more. Henry V encouraging his troops to take the city of Hartford.
Harfleur. Thank you. Well, as this is Sinead Woodbridge, who's part of our Austin Shakespeare board, and she knows that many times we have to go once more into the breach. Yes.
I'm sorry,
I know you were drinking. Yeah.
I've got to use the bathroom.
Oh, that's what I wanted to hear.
Hand in hand with Fairy Grace, we will sing and bless this place.
Who says that?
Titiana, queen of the fairies in a midsummer's night.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now, what number were you up to, Sinead? 12. 13?
This other Eden, Debbie Paradise, this fortress built by nature for herself.
So those first words he said were,
This other Eden.
this other Eden. Yeah, well, you have to understand the words. That's an important part. So what are you speaking about?
Dying John of Gaunt, lamenting England being leased out
Yeah,
near the King Richard II.
leased out. Thank you so much. What number was that?
13.
14.
Quality of mercy is not strained.
You know those words. Where are they from?
Merchant of Venice.
Yeah. It's Portia disguised as a lawyer, right? She's telling that to Shylock's. You were 14. Do we have? Yeah, we have 15.
All the world's a stage, and all the men philosophizing in as you like it.
Perfect for you, Ron. So that was 15. Do we have a 16? All right, we have 15. So I wanted to share with you some thoughts about not seeing Shakespeare plays. Now, I will say this to you. Shakespeare plays were never meant to be read. They were only meant to be seen. So often when I'm dealing with sixth graders, I say to them, what's your favorite television show? What's your favorite television show? Like an actual fictional television. Give me anything. Something from the past. Friends. That's an excellent example. So I say to them, imagine now, 450 years ahead, they're going to be reading Friends with annotation because they're going to say, what's a cell phone? And they're going to be like, oh, cell phone. So that's why, Debbie, from 450 years ago, you do have, even though 90% of Shakespeare's words are our words, a few of them are really tricky. But what you all just read was very available to you right away, right? Yes, of course.
Do you think Shakespeare plays are as far from reality then as Friends are as far from reality now?
I just think they were better.
No, I mean the distance from reality.
I don't know exactly. You think Friends is distant from reality? I think Friends is as boring as reality. That's my problem.
I think what he's trying to say, like, if you gave someone in 1600s England and made them watch Friends, would they be as confused about what's happening in Friends?
Is that what you mean?
No, I meant that I find Friends now not related to reality. Yeah, there may be some not.
I think that Shakespeare was more everyday life was on stage. So Romeo and Juliet starts with a fight in the street. I think in Elizabethan times they were fighting in the streets, and I think the prince would come out and say, "You all better stop it." But today I actually would like you to consider reading a 14-line poem, because that's a sonnet, and sonnets were never meant to be said. They were only meant to be read. And I know that later Derek's going to read this one for you, but I made you 12 copies, so you'll have to share. So pass these out. So this is Shakespeare's sonnet, Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day? And poetry often has comparison in it, right? But This is only sonnet 18, and he writes 137 sonnets. So this is at the beginning of his sonnet writing. And this was written to a single individual person. I just want to encourage you to go online, read 14 lines. How hard could it be? Read 14 lines and see how it goes. So, Derek, are you ready? Derek's going to read this aloud for us, even though I just said, don't read it aloud. Yes. Come up, Derek. Come up, Derek.
Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May. Sometimes to hot the eye of heaven shines. No, that's
You're in the right ballpark. No, you're in the right ballpark. Some of them are coming back to you, right? Some of those lines are coming back. Thank you. No, that was a good shot. I applaud
Thanks,
you.
John.
However, Derek really is an actor. And you know what actors live on? Yeah. Applause. Applause.
Oh. Oh, I have this.
Yeah, go over here. Get over here. Get in the video.
I don't think
That
I
was
need
your
this
cue.
one.
Yeah, I do. You need it for the video. You need it for
Oh.
the video.
We need it for the audience. Speaking in the mic.
Okay.
Here.
Go, Derek.
In this sonnet, the poet tries to comfort himself with the thought that his beautiful
There you go.
his beautiful beloved is not just going to die and be forgotten, because his poem will make her live on. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer will not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee.
Woo! Thank you very much. Watch that.
Well done.
Thank you so much. So, I have a lovely blank piece of paper here and a pen. If you have never come to, is this on? If you have never come to an Austin Shakespeare show, if you write your name and your email address on this piece of paper, we'll send you, a notice once a month of what we're doing. But more importantly, we'll send you a free ticket. So if you'd like a free ticket, put your name, your full name, and print it, would you? And write your email address, and then we'll get you a free ticket to our next Curtain Theater show that's not free, and that's Richard III. The show that Kirk is going to be in, Romeo and Juliet, is FREE, free. So thank you, Kirk. Anything you want to talk about that we haven't talked about?
Well, we do have time for questions and things of that nature. If you guys have any questions. Otherwise, we can do one last little discussion of the balcony scene of Romeo and Juliet, if anybody was interested, or questions. Whichever one you guys prefer. Shanae.
I don't have a question, I have an observation.
Sure.
And that observation is, the more Shakespeare you read, the more you realize that he's holding a mirror. All of the things in Shakespeare are universal. Romeo and Juliet, we go through this over, that hopefully you will learn and know, because we're all
Thank you. Lovely. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Yes, please. Go ahead.
Reminds me of when somebody compared King Richard to Richard Nixon, the same way.
Some of us think there is a Julius Caesar in our midst. Hi.
Yeah.
This is more just, I guess a lot of art is hard. What I mean is that, like, you go to an art museum and you see, even the good stuff, relatively, right? It's like you have to make yourself present to look at that portrait or that landscape or the dance or the sculpture or the, lots of art, not all, but a lot of art, it does take something. And I think that to appreciate Shakespeare, the parts that are really worthwhile, you want to look at the language in the context of, because you guys both said a lot about the words, and I have found some of his words absolutely beautiful. understand what that character is and what he's been for the 20 minutes or the 2 hours you've already seen him, and what he's doing now when he's talking about the light breaking and and this woman is breaking his heart and his heart. I mean, I think when you see it in context, but you have to bring something to it. And I just think that by reading some of these things really quickly tonight, we can lose sight of the fact that but I think it can really be repaying, which doesn't mean I love all Shakespeare, but some of it I find incredibly.
Thank you.
moving,
Thank you so much for that.
Well, if I could say something to that real quick, because I think that's absolutely true. And I've noticed an observation is just there's people who, if you talk to people who love Shakespeare, there's some moment they had, but it was an educational moment. So I know people who were raised with Shakespearean families. And so their family would go to the summer in the park and as kids, and they would experience it. There is a barrier, I think, of what Tara is mentioning, that you have to go through before you start appreciating. And there are certain things you need to be aware of, in my opinion, to really get the full brunt and enjoyment out of Shakespeare. For instance, when you're looking at just a scene like the balcony scene, one of the things I was going to talk about if we had the time was how to look at a scene and to look at the words idea of what is he saying, what does it mean, what's going on, what are they trying to accomplish in this moment, which will help you, I think, appreciate the words Anne was mentioning, the idea of the poetry coming from the stage, the reality of the kind of stage they had. So that's something you need to be aware of when you enter into Shakespeare. And I think what's nice about doing this at the Curtain Theater is that's a replica, it's a miniature replica of Shakespeare actual stage. So you could actually experience what it was like. And what that means, though, is you're going to have to do a little bit of work. But once you do, I do think that Shakespeare's plays are overflowing with meaning in every single word, which is why people love to return to it. But you have to go through that first iteration, that first experience, which may be a little challenging, to be honest.
I think it's just hanging on. I think some people go and then after 10 minutes they're like, I don't understand. But the truth is, it's after 10 minutes that you actually start to understand. It's just like a little breakthrough. But Ron, go ahead.
Earlier, the question was, why did Shakespeare last all those?
Yeah.
Now, I got your answer, Kirk, about the language, but I don't recall what's your answer to that?
Actually, my answer is more about people. I think those characters are phenomenal. So when you all read a little bit, those characters are individual and real and alive and exciting. Whether it's Antony or whether it's Henry or any of those guys, I think it's the characters. But thank you for asking. Somebody over here had something to say.
You mentioned that something about showing how every moment is full of meaning. And when I study objectivism, I understand that art in general, whatever kind of art it is if it has the purpose, objectivist or objective, if it has the purpose of affirming, inspiring, and motivate people within their own life, routine pursuits, So whether your passion is for literature or drama or music, mine is jazz. If you get enough of this stuff to relieve your boredom in life, what you find is, if you appreciate it, whatever the form is, that you find that most moments of your own life are full of meaning.
Well, so I'm definitely not an objectivist scholar. I would recommend reading the Romantic Manifesto. I do think, in my experience, there's a little bit of a confusion of what Ayn Rand said, I believe, again, about that art is about inspiration. I don't think that's quite accurate. I think it's broader than that, in the sense that, like she says, art is for contemplation's sake. There's a kind of training of your consciousness. So there's a much broader thing that art does, which is why I'm always encouraging people to have other experiences than the art you're comfortable with, because there's other kinds of training your mind can do. So, I'm not very musical, but I do these reaction shows on YouTube where I have people recommend these things because I'm trying to experience different forms of art. I'm very comfortable in literature and poetry. Other people aren't. I do think that literature and poetry is probably one of the more important ones, but I know a lot of people disagree with me on that, just because of our consciousness is words. We're using words to interact with reality. But I just want to encourage you to not be stuck in it has to be inspirational. And I will say that Romeo and Juliet, Antony and Cleopatra, these plays, these characters are inspirational. It's set like they're heroes. Juliet is a hero. If you look at her arc, she's a hero. What she does as a 13-year-old girl, she's heroic. And that's worthy of contemplation itself. He did believe in a fatalistic world where they were going to die, and things didn't happen where they got together at the end. And that's sad and tragic, and this is why Ayn Rand didn't like him on some level, and I agree with that. But
What I didn't mean to emphasize the idea of just inspiration. It's just that if you engage yourself with art of different types,
I agree with that.
then
Just keep, yeah.
and you mentioned that it shows that there's a fullness of meaning. That is what you can experience more of in your own life. Is a more full,
Oh, from doing this with art itself.
well, life
Yes.
itself, but art is a higher level of focus on that.
Thank you.
Well,
Somebody back here.
yeah.
Yeah. So you talked a bit about about the history of this trope in Romeo and Juliet, and I was wondering if Shakespeare was the first to adapt it to theater.
No.
Many
Absolutely.
of those, they weren't all poems. The one I was talking about is Lovely and Omega was a play. But thank you for asking.
But that is a good question. He did a lot, I think, too, including creating psychological characters in a way that I don't think people did before him, and lower class characters. So this is something that's kind of unique to him. Now he's not the only one who does this, but there's a
Did
there's a
Derek
history.
want to say something?
Yeah, please.
I agree with Anne that it's important to get to the character. And I think what prevents a lot of people from doing that is reverence for Shakespeare.
I see.
And if you listen to a university professor of English attempting to read any poem, including the sonnet, the result is a funeral dirge. There's no spirit, there's no life, there's no melody, there's nothing. Because they don't get through their reverence to the character behind it.
Thank you.
So I wouldn't recommend listening to anybody from any university trying to read a
Well, some of those lectures are interesting to me, but I'm a nerd.
Same here. I
anything-
love those. Yeah.
Anything, Kirk, that you'd like to do before you end?
No, we can end. We can do I'm going to be doing some stuff on YouTube to help people get more out of this, because I cannot stress just how I'm really enjoying the process of rereading this, and I hope you guys will join in doing this with me. I know, and you often say it's meant to be experienced, and that's 100% true. For me, I struggle when I go to see a Shakespeare play. I really do. And the way that I get around that for myself to get all this rife meaning, to get, when they're talking about this metaphor of her being the son and what that means to him, and how this is rife throughout this whole, what does that mean? Why is that important? I mean, she's cosmically important. How do you understand that when you're just watching this play for the first time and you're hearing these words for the first time? So I really recommend going and watching the 1969 Romeo and Juliet is one you recommend, which I think is a good one. Watching some YouTube videos to give you the plot so you know the characters, because one thing I've noticed is when I watch a Shakespeare play that I haven't studied a little bit before is the language is complicated, and then I'm like, wait, who's that again? Who's doing? So it's like there's multiple layers of confusions. So you want to eliminate some of the layers of confusion so you can go in there. And the joy of live theater is the way that Anne and each of the actors are going to be interpreting these different words for you. And so you'll have an interpretation, they'll have it. You could say, Kirk sucked as the prince. That's horrible. Or that was the best prince I've ever seen. That's what I'm hoping you're going to say. And that's the experience of it. And that's what makes live experience so beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, what is the dates?
May 23rd through June 9. And it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And it is free. You do have to go online and get a free ticket because we want to make sure we have enough seats. Yeah.
There will be a mail out if we're on the
Yeah, there'll be an email. Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, Kirk will really let you understand it. You don't have to do any studying in advance. Yes.
And without any current production bias, Romeo and Juliet or West Side Story? What would you choose?
I'm a big Sondheim fan, but, you know, Sondheim didn't write. He only wrote the lyrics to West Side Story. So, a Romeo and Juliet. Now, I think Ayn Rand really thought West Side Story was degrading Romeo and Juliet. Well, because they're taking it to the street. They're taking this, you see what I mean? And she knew the West Side, and the West Side was not pretty before Lincoln Center tore it all down. But thank you for asking. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you, Kirk, for having us.
Thank you.
Audience, you know what you do now? Hooray!
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Anne. Go see Shakespeare.